Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the CEDH cast. My name is Ian and with me as always is my co-host Braden.
Hi.
On this week's episode we are talking about the spoilers from Zendikar Rising and their place in the competitive EDH format. But before we get into details on that, let's go to our patron shoutout. Braden, take us away.
All right, our patron shoutout this week is a very special patron by the name of Chef Deadpool, otherwise known as Nathan Jones. Recently updating his Twitter handle to the Hermit Druid, I believe. So
yes, that is very true.
If you want to check him out on Twitter, he's very popular there. He's like a celebrity,
Twitterer.
chef. He's like a Twitter celebrity chef.
Yeah.
So you should check him out. He's pretty great. We just brewed a Omnath deck with him, which we'll be talking probably about during this episode.
Yep.
Yeah, just a cool guy, positive. Looks way younger than he is, at least according to me. So yeah. Go Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan's a great guy, and he's been pretty awesome to work with. We've had him on for his Kazuru Kima episode, and as mentioned, we did the Omnath deck with him, so we're happy to keep working with the guy.
Yeah, it's probably been too long since we've had him on. We should probably fix that.
Yeah, truth.
Right. So yeah, Nathan, if you get pointed towards this episode, in case you just don't happen to see it, and you want to do something with us, finger guns. So yeah, let's get started.
Yeah, man.
All right, so this episode we're doing a review of spoilers so far. We almost have the full spoilers. I doubt we're going to see anything too crazy from this point on. Like a rogue just got spoiled 5 minutes ago that's playable if it didn't say warriors on it.
Yeah.
So we're probably fine. All right.
Yeah.
Our first card is Omnath, Locus of Creation. It costs red, green, white, blue. It's a legendary elemental creature. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so it's food chain outlet. And then it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you either gain 4 life, add Omnath's mana cost, or deal 4 damage to each opponent. The way it works is if it's your first land, you gain 4 life. If it's your second land, you'll get 4 mana. And if it's your third land, you'll deal 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker. And
that you don't control.
Yeah. And then after that, your 4th land drop doesn't do anything.
Right.
Interestingly, you can blink the Omnath to reset this. So like if it's your 5th land for turn, but Omnath left the battlefield and came back after your 4th land drop for some reason, now you'll have to gain 4 life or something like that, So,
yeah.
Obviously, it's a food chain outlet. It's a dockside outlet because you can just bounce Omnath the same way you're bouncing dockside.
Yep.
It's a ritual in the command zone, kind of. Like, it's kind of cool that you
Yeah.
can, like, play Omnath, then play a land, then crack the land to, like, get your mana back, which is, like, really cute. There's an interesting line where you, with the 4 mana, where you can go, like, play Omnath, crack your fetch land, in response to the draw trigger, you'll get 4 mana, because it's your second land entering the battlefield. You play Enlightened Tutor, and then you draw the card off Enlightened Tutor from the ETB, and then you use the rest of the mana to play Food Chain. Like, so there's like some cute stuff you can do like that with the mana and the draw trigger.
It is good to know that this is, as far as food chain outlets go, it's definitely not one of the more effective ones, just because you are able to draw your whole deck and you are able to have infinite creature mana, but you definitely, I mean, obviously with a lot of decks, you do not have as much trouble when you have your entire deck in hand, but it is something to note that you cannot, it's not like for a sliver which the spells are cast for free. You do need to actually be able to assemble a win.
I kind of disagree. I think...
Well, I mean, I'm just stating that whether it's good or not, that doesn't matter. What I'm saying is the state fact of it is it draws you your full deck. It does not actually cast the spells for free. I'm not claiming an opinion on whether that's what makes it viable or not.
Yeah, but I think it is an opinion to say it's not a good outlet. Like, it's. I
said it's not as good as.
I don't know.
Other
I think
outlets,
I think it's the same. I think this is like. I think this is better than First Sliver as an outlet, for example.
I think there's going to be many times. Well, while the landfall ability definitely gives this card way more utility than like First Sliver has in the command zone, I think there's going to be times where the fact that it's not actually winning you the game is going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, I I don't know. Like I've played First Sliver. It like the casts like I don't know. I'd rather draw my deck than cast all the spells in my deck for free. Um, I mean, like sure, there's stacks pieces that doesn't get around, but then there's stacks pieces that does get around, like Lavinia for some reason, things like that.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know. I think if you were to ask me like what would be my preferred outlet in the command zone for food chain, it would be ETB draw card. Like that's probably exactly what I want. I don't.
Interesting.
I would prefer that to the First Sliver. And
Yeah.
then like
And we've talked about
it makes it better. It's better as like a dockside outlet than First Sliver, I think.
Yes, right. So that's what I was going to bring up next, is that this deck actually probably, just because food chain is like a little clunky, especially without the forbidden tutors, it's just a lot better that with this deck that you can flicker it infinitely with a meal, or you can bounce it infinitely with Sabretooth. Like there's just like this as a dockside outlet is like pretty succinct and pretty strong, and its second ability allows you to like have a bunch of mana to cast a meal and like get your enabler and dockside out in the same turn. So it's definitely like I feel like a lot better slanted to take on that role as opposed to the food chain one.
Yeah, I think it's like really nice for like you play Omnath on turn 2 or turn 3, then the following turn you like play your fetch land, and then you have enough mana to go for it. Because
Totally.
like now that 4 mana pays for a meal, or to your Sabretooth or whatever your combo piece is. So
Yeah.
or Baron. So
Yeah.
seems pretty strong. All right. Tazri, Beacon of Unity. Tazri is a white legendary creature, human warrior. Costs 4 and a white. It costs 1 less for each creature in your party. So for those of you who don't know, the way the party mechanic works is you can have a wizard, a rogue, a warrior, and a cleric on the battlefield. And if you have one of each, you have a full party. If you have a changeling in play, that only fills 1 slot, so it's like 4 slots that have to get filled. So Tazri can theoretically cost 1 mana. It'll probably usually cost like 4, maybe 3 if you're like really going deep. I don't expect it to ever cost 2.
Yeah.
So then it has 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, 2 green, for a total of 4 mana or 8 mana, depending, or 6 mana. Like it
Between 4 to 8 mana.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you can look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 clerics, rogues, warriors, wizards, and/or ally cards from amongst them and put them into your hand, and then you put the rest in the bottom in a random order. So notably, it's a colorless outlet because you can, well, kind of. It's a infinite colorless outlet, sort of, but you're going to need colored mana.
Yeah.
But if you, let's say, only had blue mana, like, for some reason, you could use only blue mana to win the game, actually, probably pretty easily.
I think the one thing that makes this like a little worse than something like, well, I mean, obviously it's like worse than a Thrasios in the sense that like when I play the infinite mana combos in that deck that only generate colorless mana, Thrasios draws you into the cards that can then filter your mana. Like I play a couple signets and then it turns it into a dockside and something like that. Whereas unfortunately Tazri kind of misses most of those, which is definitely tough.
I think like if you like wanted to play Scepter, I think this is like a fine Scepter counter, because a lot of times in Scepter you'll have like like a mana dork or something. And even just like making infinite green, I feel like would be useful to like. I feel like there's probably a chain there, or infinite of like, let's say you have a signet that makes blue black. Like you can definitely win the game off of a blue black signet.
Right. I guess why wouldn't you just play Golos if you're trying to do a 5-color Scepter thing?
Because you want to play Tazri.
Oh, okay.
I think Golos is probably better as a aggressive ad nauseum deck, though. To be honest, like I think this deck.
Oh, most definitely.
I think if you want to play like a 5-color like mid-rangey deck, I think this is fine. Like if you don't, I spent some time brewing this commander. Baron Master Wizard is a wizard, as my local Philadelphia group loves to say. They always, whenever you see them, they're like, Ben will go up to you and say, "Did you know Baron Master Wizard is a wizard?" And I'll say, "Yes, Ben. Please never speak to me ever again." I'm not kidding. It's like an actual meme. But Baron Master Wizard is a wizard. Spellseeker is a wizard. Thassa's Oracle is a wizard. Notion Thief is a rogue. There's quite a few. Aven Mindcensor is a wizard. There's quite a few powerful cards that are in these, like, in the party, or their party people, as I was calling them. So there's quite a few powerful cards. I'm definitely not listing off all of them. Like Dark Confidant, I guess another one.
A lot of wizards, I'm noticing.
Oh, they're all wizards. Like, all the powerful ones are definitely wizards. There's, like, I was thinking of including, what is it? It's Mindblade Render. I was thinking of including Mindblade Render because Tazri is a warrior and Mindblade Render is a warrior, so you can find it off Tazri. And Tazri is a 4/6, which is just massive. I mean, that is absurd.
Yeah, it's a big body.
That's a fat lady. So I thought about Mindblade Render, but just so you, like, if you're interested in, like, I think it's kind of interesting, like, building a deck where, like, you need to play around, like, synergies that are, like, not so as constrictive as, like, legendary, you know, like, that's something about Sisay I don't like, is that, like, a lot of the legendary cards are not that good. Like Spellseeker, if the cards you're having to play are Spellseeker, Thassa's Oracle, Notion Thief, like, that's, like, not a very restrictive set, but at the same time, like, I mean, like, you know, it's not nothing, but it's fun. I mean, I think sometimes it's fun to play within those restrictions. One reason I do like Tazri is, like, a lot of times I'll be watching Rebel play Sisay, and, like, the having to be 5 mana and having to be exactly the right colors is, like, is punishing. Like, there's a lot of times where, like, I'm sure Rebel would prefer that, like, she could use, like, a mana crypt to activate one of Sisay's colors, you know?
Totally.
So I think the fact that Tazri can do that is really valuable. And to be honest, like, people keep telling me that, like, Sisay's ability to tutor up creatures is better than Tazri. To be honest, like, on an empty board, like, I'd rather have Tazri than Sisay. Like, Sisay can go get a Oath of Nissa, you know? I'd rather have the chance of hitting, like, a Notion Thief or a Spellseeker or a Thassa's Oracle than
to be fair, we should definitely note the fact that one is to hand and one is to the board. That
I get that. I just think that, like, to be honest, like, I think the grind potential in Tazri is less. It's more difficult to disrupt, but it's less linear, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So, like, if you let Sisay sit on the battlefield uninterrupted, eventually Sisay will probably just have so many permanents on the battlefield it's hard to beat. But that takes a long time, and it's really easy to just, like, disrupt the Oath of Nissa. You know? Like, just Nature's Claim your Oath of Nissa, now you can never get to 2, so now you can never go get Thrasios or whatever to drop the you know, Six are playing.
Right.
Or Tazri, like, you can just pay 4 mana to, like, look at the top 6 cards. If you see a Spellseeker, you put it to hand. If you see a Thassa's Oracle, you put it to hand. I think that's pretty, like, that's not bad. I think that's better than the first 2 Sisay activations, to be honest. And they're cheaper, and they're easier. Like,
On the other hand, I find a lot of Sisay decks end up just playing those first 2 activations out of their hand. You know, that's just from the experience I've seen with the deck.
That's fair. I guess, like, to me, like, those, I don't think, like, people will bring up, like, oh, you can get an Ashok and an Narset. And, like, yeah, Ashok and Narset are, like, they're good cards, but they're not, like...
Yeah, they're whatever. I mean...
Yeah, they're, like, fine. We're, like, again, Notion Thief, Baron Master Wizard, Thassa's Oracle, Laboratory Maniac, with Spellseeker. Like, those are, like, even if it's just a chance of hitting those cards are, like, the cards you're usually tutoring for if you're trying to win the game. So, like, to me personally, like, I would rather have a chance of hitting those, like, incredibly impactful, powerful cards than, like, these, like, pretty impactful but not, like, proactive cards, you know?
Sure, makes sense.
So that's why I think Tazri is better than Sisay, and that's kind of why. I mean, additionally, the ability is, like, so much easier to use. Like, so even if you think the ability is weaker, I think it's hard to say that it's, like, significantly weaker, and it is, at least in my opinion, much easier to use. Like, 5 mana Tazri, which is like you have Sultai mana and you pay 2 for the red, is like still really easy to do in comparison to one of every color, you know?
Sure. Makes sense.
All right. We spent a lot of time talking about these first two. So we have the pathways. So this is Bright Climb Pathway. It taps for white on one side and black on the other. I don't have them all in a row because I messed it up. But so basically, we're just going to talk about them as they come up. Bright Climb Pathway, you can basically choose one side to be a plains, one side to be a swamp. I think these are like super strong in 2-color decks, especially Tainted Pact decks. Like Yuriko, this is like so first of all, it's making the mana base way cheaper because like a Boro is like $50 or something ridiculous now. This is just replacing that because I have no reason to play a Boro.
Right.
And I mean, these lanes are quite strong. Like they enter untapped always, and they always make the color that you need in your 2-color deck. Even if they don't make 2 colors, which like some decks do need, I find that most 2-color decks are not like, they're playing enough duels that like they're going to have another land that makes the other color, right? Like if, let's say you have a basic island and a flip land that taps for blue or black, you'll just choose the black side, you know? Most of the time.
I think these are going to go in 2-color Tainted Pact decks, and I think that's probably the extent of where I would play them.
Yeah.
But that's the good amount of decks in our format, so it's enough to make note of.
For sure. So this is the next one. This is blue-red.
The Is It one, yeah.
This probably goes to Niv Mizzet. This is probably... That's like the deck that I think of.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, too.
Blue-black, Yuriko.
Definitely.
Green-red. Probably like Rukthar if that's a deck, but to be honest, like, these decks are probably just want basics because they're playing like Blood Moon and stuff.
They're Blood Moon, yeah, exactly.
Green-white. There isn't really a green-white deck in our format that I think wants to play these. Maybe some of the Abzan decks could play these cards. Like, I think the green-black one, if there even is one, if there is a green-black one, that one's probably strong. Like, I could see myself playing that in Core of Hold, where like a lot of the times I just need a green or a black land, just because of the way the deck works. Red-white. I think you mentioned this in Winota. Would you play this?
We may play it. We're on Magus still, so I'm probably not going to keep it in, but we'll
You could
see.
just replace this with a mountain, right?
Yeah.
How many mountains are you on?
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'm only on like 2 or 3. So,
right.
And that's only because I'm running cards like Prismatic Vista and Fetches.
Yeah. I think this card's better than a mountain in... Like, this card is better than the 4th mountain in Boros decks.
Totally, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right, so now we have a card that isn't a flip land. We might see more. Well, this is a flip land, actually. So this is Emeria's Call. It's 4 white, white, white for sorcery. You create 2 4/4 Angel Warrior tokens with flying, and then non-angel creatures you control gain indestructible until your next turn. So this card's pretty bad on its front. The notable thing about this card is that it has a flip side, where it's a land that you pay 3 life to have enter untapped, and it taps for white. So there have been decks that have been talking about this. I believe Heliod is like the big one.
Totally.
That deck does stacks people out, and 2 4/4 angels that also give your other creatures indestructible is actually like relevant in that deck because like it can get so grindy. The 3 life is totally unimportant. And the deck runs
especially since it's a life gain deck, yeah.
And the basics, the deck is on enough basics that it doesn't... The protection against, like, basic decks, like, the protection against non-basic land hate is unimportant. Like, upping your non-basics, as long as it taps for white, is nothing.
Pretty irrelevant.
So, this is, like, an auto-include, basically, in probably every mono-white deck. To be honest, I think in like Boros, I think this card's questionable only because you're probably on Blood Moon. But even then,
I'm not a fan of that one.
It's like fine.
If 4/4 angels ever were something I gave a flying crap,
it does make 2 Winota creatures.
It does,
and there are probably games. There are probably games where you would pay. Sadly, you would pay 7 mana for 2 4/4 flyers. That also makes.
Would I?
Yeah, I think for like at no cost to your deck besides the occasional like I think the problem is the Blood Moons, right? Like I think this card is like a snap auto include if you're not on Blood Moon and Winota, right?
Right.
Because like it's free. It's 3 life,
Yeah.
which is nothing, and it's
Yeah.
free. It has no cost, which is why
Yes.
these are broken. But in
Yeah.
your deck, you actually do have a cost because you have to run enough basics. So,
Speaking of, we were talking about Tainted Pact mana bases. These cards are actually really good in those Tainted Pact mana bases because they are a spell and they get to basically, in a sense, be like your third basic, which is pretty nice. So you can slot those in a Tainted Pact mana base and have some success with that.
yeah, for sure. The only problem is like usually are on Adnaz in the white.
Yeah,
And this
that
is a 7
definitely
mana
tough.
spell, which is not a problem for the black one, which we'll see in a bit because it's an X spell. But
Yeah,
it's
that's
something
a
to
good
think
point.
about.
I forgot that. So, just so people understand, each of these cards have an official front and back side, right? So, Emeria's Call, the front side is 7 mana. So, yes, that's actually a really good point
Yeah.
on that with Adnaz. If you're on something like a black-white Razaketh thing, however, and you're on Tainted Pact, that would probably be fine. But that's more few
This
in.
this makes two creatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny enough. All right.
Cool.
So the next is Valakut Exploration. This is a card I added. So Paco is always looking for 3 mana value engines, and this is a card that is actually good if your deck is just playing 3 mana value engines.
Yeah.
Paco's on tons of land ramp. It's on Exploration. It's on 3 visits, and it's on it's on all the fetches. Like it totally can enable Valakut Exploration. I should read the card.
Yeah.
So it's 2 and a red for an enchantment. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card as long as it remains exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. So this card does pressure our opponent's life totals, which is like kind of important.
Seems like it's just a kind of a free benefit with this card.
Yeah,
as
right?
opposed to like
I think
the selling point.
Yeah. I think the selling point is that it draws 2 cards a turn, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
Most definitely.
And then on top of that, I think like if you really think about it, right, you're playing Paco, right? You're in a grindy game where like you're you have an exploration in play because you had it like in your turn 1, and you force out an early Paco, and you're against like these ad nauseam decks. Getting 3 damage, like 3 or 4 additional damage to your opponents each turn in these like
it matters.
is like super important, and I could see Valakut Exploration doing that, and it also makes like them have to block Paco. Like 2 turns of taking like 3 damage, let's say, is like enough to be like, all right, like I'm now at, let's say, 25 life. Like that's like I can't go to 12 from 1 Paco swing, because then that's like 2 more turns or 3 more turns of Valakut Exploration. So I think this card's really interesting there, and that's probably it. Maybe in some weird green-red deck that doesn't exist right now, but.
And also kind of it's interesting because it sort of pays off the turns strategy, right? Because it gives you a sorcery speed payoff, and because you're obviously going to be playing all these lands when you're kind of turn storming off, right? Like I feel like it's kind of indicative to yield to these turn style strategies.
And one thing I want to say is that Paco's always trying to feed the graveyard because we are on cards like Underworld Breach, but we're also on like Seasons Pass. And the fact that cards don't stay in exile and they go to the graveyard is huge. That's like that's a
cool.
massive upside.
Most definitely.
So I'm really excited for this card. I haven't been playing a lot of Paco, but I probably will once COVID is over. Like it's probably a deck I'm going to build one day, and this card will probably go in it if my meta gets grindy enough. It's pretty sick. Like if your opponents are playing like a Crompton in a mid range deck, I think this card's insane. Like that deck it just plays so many life use, cards like that. So all right, next one. See Gate Stormcaller. It is a human wizard creature for 1 and a blue with kicker 4 blue. So it costs 5 mana to kick it. When it enters the battlefield, you copy the next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 2 or less. If you kick it, you get 2 copies. And you may choose new targets for the copy. So like if it's a removal spell, you might bounce 2 things or something like that. Interestingly enough, this plus a bounce spell and Dockside is like kind of cute, I guess. Where you play Dockside, you play this, you play the bounce spell, you bounce this to your hand and Dockside back to your hand. But I don't really like it. It's kind of cool in Anala where it's like 3 mana double fork, but even then that's like 3 mana double fork.
Yeah, I know people have been talking about this, but it's not like the loops it makes are anything infinite. It's like kind of worse than a Snapcaster Mage in a lot of places, and it's just like,
Yeah, I Adept called it a 4 mana Thassa's Oracle, which I think is great because if you think about it, you're like 4 mana Thassa's Oracle is not that bad, and then you like look at Jace, Builder of Mysteries, and you're like, oh,
you're like, maybe it
no, it's
is.
not.
Yeah,
Maybe it's not.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think you and I probably agree pretty heavily on this card. It's really cute,
yeah.
but it's not quite there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ian's favorite card in the set.
I'm so happy.
Archon of Emeria. It's 2 and a white for a
Yes.
Archon creature. It has flying. It's a rule of law, and it also makes your makes the non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped.
So good.
So,
It's so good.
Um,
That bottom effect has been something that like the 3 mana Thalia, the Heretic Cathar, people have been thinking about playing that because obviously in a format full of fetch lands, you're like double time walking people in certain points. And the fact that I don't have to play Thalia and I get to play another Rule of Law effect with evasion that triggers Winota is like, it's so good.
yeah, the fact it's not a
so
human
good.
is huge. Like, I'm kind of shocked it isn't a human, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
I'm surprised this isn't like just like a human warrior, you know? Like,
Yeah.
so I mean,
It's
which is great.
it's my pre-order of the set. I've already pre-ordered
Is there
a
a
copy.
foil of this card?
There's a borderless foil, yeah.
Yes. Pick those
Yes.
up.
Yeah, but if as Braden's been talking about the Turbo Naz being a pretty prevalent archetype in the meta, and if that's the case, turns out Rule of Laws are real good.
Yeah, I have a problem with rule of law effects. We don't need to get into it here. They
We disagree on this so thoroughly. Yeah.
I think they
Yeah.
are just problematic. Like they cause really strange. Like I've seen a lot of games go where like someone goes for it through the rule of law. Maybe it's like some combo that doesn't really care about it or something, or they're just trying to like cast a Peer into the Abyss during their turn, and someone's like, I can't let that happen. Encounters it, and then like the next person in turn is like, all right, I guess I'll like use this 5 mana I have here to cast my ad nauseum, and then it resolves.
I just never the game. I've literally never been in a game that went like that. I've never experienced that. What it back when Flash was happening, like that would happen all the time, right? Because someone would try to play a Rule of Law and then they would lock people out of interactions, and then Flash would win an instant speed, right? But even with Nas, they have one chance to get the Nas off and one chance on their turn to remove the Archon, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Or the Eidolon or the Deafening Silencer, and every time I've played it, and especially in these pods where even players that have the Rule of Law shut down, a lot of the time they will still fight to protect it if they know someone's just ripped a Peer or an Ad Nas in the turn before. So
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. It just makes the game function in a way that is very difficult to predict, which I don't like. I think people generally don't play like maybe this will change over time, but people don't seem to play around rule of law correctly. Like it's kind of like Paco, where there just really is no correct solution. Like with Paco, a lot of the time it's like, are you gonna force will this Paco, or are you gonna force will the ad nauseum that's coming right after it? And you're kind of in the situation where it's like Paco's not gonna win right now, but this ad nauseum they just tutored for will, and you're like in a bad situation. And I feel like rule of law creates like not identical, but just like similar situations where people are put into like a difficult place where there's like very few correct answers, and people can like really easily throw games because of that. And I'm apprehensive to play cards that.
I think you are more likely to throw games with a bad counter spell than you are with a Rule of Law, but that's
Well, you're not the one throwing the game; it's someone else, right? Like
Sure,
rule of law
sure.
forces. Like we all know someone who like the moment they see a spell that can get countered by mana drain, they mana drain something.
sure.
And
yeah.
I feel like this card just like pushes those people to make those decisions even more aggressively, because like, oh, this command drain's not going to get countered, get them, and then the next person does something ridiculous and wins. So
Yeah. I yeah. I don't see that play pattern, but I wouldn't be surprised by it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the next one. Cinderclasm. This card's sick. It's 1 in a red for an instant. It has kicker for just 1 red, and it says Cinderclasm deals 1 damage to each creature. If it was kicked, it deals 2 damage to each creature instead. So, in metas of games now past, I don't know, in metagames that don't widely exist anymore, Pyroclasm was very strong, and additionally, there were times even where decks were playing like 3-mana instant speed Pyroclasms, and they were happy about it. You know, like there was
the advent of Curious Control, like that time period. Yeah,
I think even more recently, like there were people jamming. Like I've played 3-mana board wipes in like Jeskai decks, the instant speed ones.
yeah.
This card is a 3-mana instant speed Pyroclasm, which is like I think has proven that in certain metas is strong. And I love Electricity personally, like that's one of my favorite cards. And this is that but worse at its base. But to be honest, a lot of decks that like Electricity is great in decks that want to play dorks, but there are a lot of decks that don't want to play dorks. And a 2-mana instant speed like Pyroclasm can be like extremely powerful. Like this card existing when those metas ever come back, if they ever do, means that like people have to like think extra hard about how they tap out, right? Like if you're like doing stuff on your turn, you tap your lands, you leave up your dorks to block other Tymnas and stuff, and or you just leave your dorks up because you're not really thinking about, oh, this Birds of Paradise will stay up because it makes 1 of every color. I'll tap my Underground Sea. Things like that. They happen. Cinderclasm allows like decks to now be like, all right, end step, I'm going to kill all the dorks on the battlefield, go to my turn, people have less mana now I feel more comfortable to go for it. So
yeah,
I love this card. I don't think I'll see any play at all for a fair amount of time, but
yep,
that's
how I feel too.
when it does, it'll be very strong. It's just going to be a long time, I think, before the meta, like, things would have to seriously change. Like the way they print cards would have to change.
Yeah,
but
I don't think we're gonna end up ever seeing this card, but it is nice to know that if we need it, it'll be there.
Yeah, I guess like, do you ever think dorks will be the best thing to be doing in the format ever again?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like we don't know what'll be printed.
Yeah, right. Like if that ever happens, if dorks are ever the best thing to be doing again, like if they print better Edric, that's like 4 colors or something, like, which is just Tymna, I guess. But if they ever do something like that, where they print something ridiculous that makes dorks better, I think this card will be really strong. So,
yeah.
All right. Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. Now, we've seen Ashaya before on the Nissa Planeswalker creature flip card. If you're a person who cares about that. Ashaya is 3 green for a legendary creature elemental. Its power toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, so it's probably big. And then non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. So this is a card that turns on quite a few combo cards in Yasharn.
Yeah.
Any card that's like bounce a forest to do something.
Right.
You can just bounce the creature with that ability and then replay it. Now, it won't have haste because it's a creature still. So you won't be able to like bounce I think it's Querying Ranger. Like bounce Querying Ranger, replay Querying Ranger, bounce Querying Ranger for infinite ETBs or something like that. But you can at least do some degenerate stuff with Ashaya. I think, to be honest, like this deck isn't good right now. Like the decks that uses these
totally
effects.
Yeah. But it's like the last card we talked about.
Sure.
If the meta ever swings back to a point where like Yasharn is a good deck again, then this card would be very interesting in that list. I mean, it also works with like any Query and Ranger stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely true.
Yeah.
All right. So next one's up.
Yep.
Yasharn, the implacable, implacable, Earth.
I think Implacable, yeah.
It's 2 green for a legendary creature, Elemental Boar. Gotta love those elementals. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a basic forest and a basic plains card. You reveal those cards and you put them into your hand. then you shuffle your library. So it is like, it's almost like card advantage. Players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. This card's super, super weirdly worded. So it's worded so that fetch lands that are legal in standard work, but fetch lands that are legal in older formats don't work, which is kind of interesting.
Correct. Yes.
It's quite odd, actually. But that is a fix, I guess, if that's a problem you want to solve. So yeah, it turns off fetch lands.
Turns off Dockside mana.
Ooh. I mean, Collector Oof already does that, but still, ooh.
Yeah, totally. It's just another version of that effect, yeah.
That's nice. I like that. I wish this card was better.
Maybe like 1 mana less, it might be a little
I think
better,
like green-white. I think green-white for a 2/2, cut the ETB, and it's fine.
Sure. I mean, the effect is there, right? It's existed before, but it I have a feeling.
Baneslayer Angel, I think. I think that was the.
No, it's a 1 white angel. One white angel.
Demon
maybe
Slayer?
Jubilation.
Angel Jubilation, yes.
Jubilation.
Yeah.
But obviously green white is a lot easier than white.
yeah. Even like if it was triple green white, that would be easier than white. So yeah, I don't think this card will see a lot of play, but
I think it'll probably be like one of those blood pod flex slots. Probably.
If you want this turned into a commander, I imagine this is a card that Patrick from the 99 already has brewed. This seems right up his alley, right? Like command zone stats pieces.
It just doesn't win the game, which you need the deck to do. So
yeah.
But I think in the 99 it can have a place in some decks, and that's probably it.
All right, Nahiri's lithoforming. So it's like it's like in most decks, I will say it is a bad scapeshift. I won't disagree with that, Ian. In most decks, it is a bad scapeshift.
I didn't say anything.
So it's X red, sacrifice X lands. For each land you sacrifice this way, draw a card. You may play X additional lands this turn, but lands you control in the battlefield tap this turn. So why is this here? I think this is pretty sick in Corvold. So you sack X, let's say, I think X3 is probably, maybe X2, X3 is probably like where the average spot is going to be for this. It's probably going to be like red, Dark Ritual or something like that. So you're going to sacrifice X lands, which means you draw X cards, and then you're going to draw X cards, because that's how Nahiri's lithoforming works. And then you can play any lands you draw, but that's not really why you're playing this card. Like I feel like a lot of the... It is annoying, certainly, that the land's undertapped, but I think the reason you're playing this card is it's kind of like a... what's the card that's like... It's not Bubbling Muck. It's a 1 black instant that says like sack your...
Rain of Filth?
Rain of Filth. It's like Rain of Filth, but for cards, except it's way more expensive. And
then doesn't generate mana.
Yeah, it doesn't generate mana. Although I do think it's like quite reasonable that you could like play this, sacrifice X lands, dig so many cards deep, and then like play the Rain of Filth or the there's an enchantment that does the same thing, Squandered Resources, and then like sack the lands that you replayed, even though they don't tap for mana. It still like helps you like dig yourself out of the hole you've made by paying so much mana.
Sure.
So I think that's a niche situation where I think the lands, getting the additional X land drops is like kind of useful. But I just like that this card is like red X, draw X cards ×2. I think 5 mana draw 6 in Corvold is like in the late game good enough, and because of the way Corvold mulligans, you're often just going to put this at the bottom, and then like when the game gets grindy, you might tutor this up and be like, all right, I have 5 lands, I'm just going to completely tap out, and
yeah, I mean it does, yeah,
and like try to draw a lot of cards. And I think because you're drawing twice as many cards, it's actually quite likely that you'll at least be able to replace most of the land drops. Like most of them, not all of them, but most of them. So yeah, we were talking about this card, and people were like, "Oh, there's better cards," and I think the card that I thought was better that wasn't in my list right now is Shred Memory. I'd put Shred Memory in my list before I'd put this card in my list, but I think this card's like is definitely there's like some people who are wanting to play Corvold lands, and I don't think it's very good. But if you were gonna play Corvold lands, I think this and Scapeshift would both go in.
Sure.
So that is TLDR. This card's probably not good enough, but it's probably good enough in a deck that isn't that good. So
Sure.
take what you will from that. Do you have anything to add?
No. Nothing to this card. Yeah.
All right. Turn Timber Symbiosis. 4 green, green, green for a sorcery. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. If the card has CMC 3 or less, it enters the battlefield with 3 additional counters, which is kind of cute. But you put the rest on the bottom in any order. So it's like a 7 mana. Any creature you hit just goes on the battlefield. If it's small, you get a whole bunch of counters on it.
Totally.
This card is one of the flip lands that is a mythic, so you can also just play this as a basic. This card is absolutely bonkers in Selvala.
Yes.
Just
very much
absolutely just disgusting.
Yeah.
It's quite likely that you'll hit like one of your like 3 mana 6/6s or whatever, or 2 mana 6/6s, or 2 mana 8/8s, or however big they get, and then you just put an additional 3 counters on them.
Totally.
And then you just play this as a land. You just cut one of your lands for this, and most of the time it's a land, and when it's not, it's absolutely disgusting. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's really all you have to say about it. It's one of these cards that's basically all free upside.
yeah. This card is a broken Magic card. Like even if it's not like the best card in your deck, just from a design perspective, this is just not fair at all. It's just all upside, no downside.
You just get a slightly overcosted spell in the land slot. Like that's super fine.
I think fine is like really underselling it. It's stupid.
Yeah.
It's like it's just ridiculous. I cannot believe that these cards exist. Even if they're not powerful, they're just like in the traditional sense. They break the rules.
Yeah.
It's just so stupid. All right, Thieving Skydiver. It's 1 to blue with kick or X. X can't be 0, so it's usually like a 3-drop. Flying, when it enters battlefield, you gain control of an artifact with a converted mana cost X or less. So again, 1, you're probably going to steal 1 or 0 drop. If it's an equipment, though, you attach it to this Thieving Skydiver, which is really only relevant against like Selvala, because I believe Selvala plays Skull Clamp.
Umbral Mantle? Oh, Selvala?
Yeah, I think I was playing Patrick the other day. He had a. I might be imagining.
I don't think that's a traditional inclusion, but
All right.
You know.
Heliod also plays Jitte, so
Yeah.
against Heliod you could reasonably hit a Jitte, and then
Some hermit decks play Greaves too.
and I've seen Nagila decks play Sword of Feast of Famine, even though it's not that good. It's sometimes either a budget inclusion or a spicy inclusion, or people just have like the invention and they're like, I'm gonna play with this invention because it's basically a Nature's Will, except it's not. But you know, it's close enough.
Sure.
Yeah, this card's so close.
I've been pretty notoriously down on it. If it didn't say X can't be 0, this card would be dumb. It would be so good, but as it is right now, it's probably gonna find its place in like Edric and like Yuriko.
I bet it's good in Yarok.
Sure.
Probably good there. I imagine Cobblepot's gonna be playing this card. He's like, oh, I'm gonna steal your Soul Ring and your Soul Ring. It's a ramp spell.
I kind of forgot that's a deck, yeah. But yeah. It's if you can get a Soul Ring or Mana Crypt with this, I think it's worth it. If you can't, then it starts to be a little more questionable.
I think I did the math. It's like a 30-something% chance that your opponents have a Soul Ring or a Mana Crypt in their starting hand.
Yeah.
Not even their starting hand, their first hand they mulligan. So, however, the chances don't go up that much the more they mulligan.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I might not have done the math correctly, but I did the math correctly for the starting hands. So it's like 1 in 3 games you're gonna see they're gonna have in the starting hand. But I didn't include like you know people gamble for Mana Crypt, they Enlighten Tutor for Mana Crypt. People mulligan really aggressively for like a wheel and a fast mana piece. They then get another 7. So I think this card's like, it's definitely most of the time, in my opinion, going to hit a Soul Ring or Mana Crypt. I don't think that's good enough though.
Yeah, I don't think stone raiding your opponent and getting a mana is like worth 3 mana. Like that's a lot of mana.
I think in like a Tymna deck this is probably the best, and I just don't think there's a Tymna deck that has any interest in doing that.
It also doesn't untap them, which is unfortunate because your opponents can like tap in response.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even refund itself on the turn. Like it's just,
yeah, I don't like this. All right, let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Oh, notably, it's a rogue for Edric.
Oh, sure.
Notorious Throng.
Yes. Or if you're actually, let's go back a bit. That's actually relevant.
No, we're not going to Tazri. No.
I wasn't thinking Tazri. I'm thinking of the So the farm decks have been thinking about playing this like spell that has Prowl, and it says like 7 mana cast a spell from your opponent's deck.
Knowledge exploitation.
And so the idea is you play this instead of PETA, or you play this like as your own copy of PETA, and it lets you steal an Ad Nauseam or a Peer to the Abyss from your opponent.
Interesting.
Because it's 7 mana, so it's the same amount of mana as...
Sure.
But if you hit them with like a rogue that's in your deck, which like...
It's like 4, yeah.
It's 4, which is like kind of insane. Like a 4 mana PETA is like really good. So I could actually see a world where they're playing this card because it's like sort of like it replaces itself, because in those metas they're hyper aggressively mulliganing for fast mana and the wheels, and then on top of it it turns on the Prowl fairly easily because it has flying. So I don't think they're going to do this, but that is just a very interesting thing. Thank you for mentioning that.
Thing to
note. So yeah. All right, see Gate Restoration. 4 blue. Sorcery, draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand plus 1, so it doubles the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. That doesn't matter. This might even be a downside. So it also is a land, which is the important part here.
It's another one of these effects that are also lands.
So every mono blue deck, this is free, I think.
Yep.
Just straight free. I think Urza, you can actually reasonably cast this, which is hilarious.
Wild.
The deck I have seen this the best in, though, is Narset. I think this card is like actually good in Narset. I think it's quite likely you like flip this and a wheel. You wheel, draw 7, then double the 7, go up to 14. You have no maximum hand size, and then like if you hit an extra turn, now you have no maximum hand size during all your extra turns. So additionally, this is a card you can play for free in your Narset deck that also just increases the density of spells that you can flip. So like even just like hitting this instead of a land, well, it is a land, but you know, hitting this and be able to like draw 3 cards, let's say, and turn off maximum hand size is like that is like this is a huge step, at least, you know? Like this isn't going to make Narset good.
But it's a step.
Like 1 mana tutors.
It's also pretty okay in the. It's also pretty okay in the turn and burn Yuriko decks.
Oh yes, that's true. I actually think this card is like they keep printing cards that are like really good in that deck, and I am thinking the deck is better. Like I think PETA was a huge deal because now you get to play Ad Nauseam, but you do need like a certain amount of like spells that turn on PETA, which I think like is hard to play in those decks. But
I agree.
This card is kind of insane because it is a land, and they don't care about their life.
That also just hits them for 7.
Yeah, it hits them for 7. So like, there's actually times in the deck where you're like, I need a land, but I also want to hit them for 7. I'll Mystical Tutor for this, reveal 7, get my land drop, play my land drop, play like a Changeling pass. And I think
that's interesting. I didn't think about the fact that you can Mystical Tutor for these, and if you need to land, if you're desperate.
I've considered playing one of these in Paco because for that exact reason is like there's a lot of times where you have like a personal tutor in your hand and you're like,
totally.
I wish this was a land.
Yeah.
So, all right. Cool. I think this card's nuts. It might not.
I think it's the worst of the cycle, to be fair, but that's still pretty fine.
The way I look at it,
the white one's pretty bad too.
The way I look at it, this card says 7 mana draw card.
Yeah.
At its absolute floor. I mean, like the literal worst of the worst floor. It literally just says 7 mana draw 1. And to be honest, I think on an untapped blue land, that is like fine. Like there are games where like that will win me the game, or at least like dig me out, right? Yeah. Like just like, okay, I have all this mana. The game has gone super long.
Sometimes you need that. Yeah.
And like sometimes this draws you 3. I think this draws you 3 like 7 mana
A good
draw 3
amount,
is
yeah.
not good, but 7 mana draw 3 on a land is really good.
Fine. Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, we got the red one now. Shatterskull Smashing, X red red.
I'm excited about this one.
Shatterskull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose amongst any. Basically, you can choose up to 2 planeswalkers or creatures, and it deals it. You divide up the X damage. If it's 6 or more, it deals twice that amount of damage divided as you choose. So, like, if you pay 8 for this, you can do 12 damage.
Yeah.
So, again, this is also just a land that's a mountain. On the other side, it's
Yeah.
not literally a mountain, but
Yeah.
it is a land that enters untapped if you pay 3 life that taps for red.
Yeah. I'm really excited about this card for Winota specifically because sometimes you're like playing in a grindier mid-range pod and you don't care that it's 5 mana. Sometimes you need to kill a Drannith Magistrate, and the rest of the time it's a mountain, which is a land you don't care about because it will be turned into a mountain with
Yeah.
Magus anyways. So all upside for that deck.
Yeah, I feel the same way about Paco. I think we're willing to spend 5 mana to kill a
Yeah,
Drannith Magistrate.
I was just about to talk. I feel like this is a very good Paco card.
Yeah, these cards are busted. Like
Yeah.
I cannot say this enough. Even if they're not busted in our format because we are a singleton format and because these effects are like kind of balanced for like standard or casual
Totally.
EDH, these cards are still just, again, I've said this already. From a design perspective, these cards
They're fundamentally broken.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, I think even the ETB tapped ones are like quite pushed, but these are just egregious. I think the 3 life is absolutely nothing. I think not being a basic is not a big deal at all for most decks. And Magic fundamentally should never have no opportunity cost for a card. Like, that is just
Totally.
not how this game is supposed to function, and these cards do that, which is just silly to me. So,
Yeah. Sweet.
yeah. Just have to keep saying it. Lithoform Engine.
This card's spicy as hell.
Yeah, I don't like it personally, but that's... Yeah,
I didn't say good. I said spicy.
Yeah. So it's 4 colorless for a legendary artifact. You can pay 2 mana, tap it to copy target activated or triggered ability. You choose new targets. Pay 3 and tap it. You copy an instant or sorcery. You may choose new targets. Pay 4 and tap it. You may copy target permanent spell you control. I should specify for all those that you have to be spells you control. So, so this goes infinite with
Dramatic reversal.
Dramatic Reversal, firstly. I am mad. It goes infinite with Brago, which is kind of relevant. I guess that deck probably prefers this card. The fact it can copy a counterspell in a pinch is probably important. Although that's 7 mana. I don't know where... Yeah, actually, Brago can reasonably make 7 mana. So actually, yeah, this is probably reasonable in Brago. Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see if people actually build Brago after this card comes out. Probably not. Ooh, Brago is really good with that new blue land. Brago has like infinite mana. The problem the deck has is it just makes mana. It just bounces all of its rocks.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
and
yeah.
Can you blink? You can't blink lands. That sucks. But
yeah.
So yeah, this card's probably interesting in Braga. Now that I think about it, that's interesting. But besides that, this card's probably bad. Interesting thing about this card, copying a permanent spell means that you create a token. However, you're not creating a token in the game. It just enters the battlefield as a token. So if you're playing Doubling Season, this does not make 2 copies of the token.
Right.
Important thing to know. So,
yep.
All right. I think that might be it. Nope, we got some more. Maddening Cacophony. So the reason we're talking about this is there is another card that was printed recently. It's a legendary creature that's blue, and it says...
Bruvek.
It basically doubles your mill. So if you mill someone for 1, you mill them for 2. So the way Maddening Cacophony works is it's a 1 and a blue sorcery with kicker. You kick it for 4 mana, and it mills each of your opponents half their decks. So it's 6...
If you kick it.
Yeah, so it's 6 mana. Each of your opponents mill half their decks.
And then with Bruvek, they would obviously double that, which would kill their whole library.
Yep. So as long as they don't have a shuffler, you win. And a lot of the times, that's probably just going to be enough to win the game.
Sure.
Yeah, and the fact that it's a sorcery is great. It's actually... It may not seem great, but it does mean that like Personal Tutor can go find it. It does mean that Merchant Scroll can't find it, so maybe it's a bit of a split. But Spellseeker can find it because it's 2 mana at its base, where it just mills someone for 8.
Yep.
This card's sick. I mean, it's not good, but it's sick.
Yeah. That's about it.
Ooh, okay. This card's awesome. Agadeem's Awakening. It's X black.
This is the black land.
Yeah. It's so it's the black land. It's X black. Sorcery. Return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creatures that each have a different converted mana cost of X or less. So if X is 3, you can get back a 3-drop, a 2-drop, and a 1-drop. If X is 2, you can get back a 2-drop and a 1-drop. If X is 5, you can get back a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's, I'd say, I've said it before, 5-mana Dockside is like pretty close to good enough. It's like right on the edge, I think. Like I have Eldritch Evolutioned a Dork to get an Eternal Witness to get back my Dockside, and it was not great, but it was something I was willing to do. The fact that this is a land on the other side means I've been really having a hard time with Core World figuring out 28 lands or 20 or 30 lands. This is probably just going to take a land slot, probably Gaia's Cradle. And I'm going to play this as a land a lot of the time, and a lot of the time I'm just going to be playing this as a 5-mana Dockside, and I am fine with that. It also, the fact that Agreement's a 1-drop too means like I might get back Script Prospector or a Dork, just some fodder that I've sacked a Corvold.
Sacrifice,
and that's like on its own pretty valuable. So, and you know, in its worst, a thing that could actually happen is I go Temur Sabertooth, Dockside are in the graveyard. I pay 4, get back Dockside, and Temur Sabertooth, and then I win, which is like ridiculous. That's 7 mana. But I mean, it's
to be fair, the other effects on this are 7 mana. And this definitely seems the most
pushed.
I would say pushed of the cycle.
Yeah, this is the last one they revealed. Again, I think I will say in black decks, 3 life is way more valuable than most decks.
And also, if you think about it, it's in a sense, if you're playing Nas, it's kind of 6 life, because not only are you not flipping over a 0-drop that would be a land, you're also, if you're playing it as a land, it's 3 life.
Yeah, but to be fair, if you're resolving ad Nas, you're not playing this as a land.
You're probably not playing this. Yes,
you're
totally.
probably going
You're probably
going like ritual, Agadeem's Awakening, and you're trying to like, get back your Dockside or something. So yeah, I think this card is legitimately very strong. It's definitely pushed. To be honest, I think the blue one might be better than this because the blue one is so unsituational, and it's in a color that doesn't really care about its life total at all. Maybe the red one might be better because it's removal, but blue, like 7 mana draw 3 is like in a land slot is like nothing to laugh at.
Yeah, my problem with the blue one, not to go too deep back into that one, but like if you're in a point where you're casting a 7 mana spell out of your hand, you're usually in a pretty desperate spot, which usually doesn't happen if you have a lot of cards in your hand.
Yeah, that's true.
Thought process.
That's true. Yeah, and Agadeem's Awakening is like the opposite, right? Like you're probably playing this card when you have no cards in hand because they're all in your graveyard. you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, I really like this card.
I think it's good.
I'm probably cutting Gaia's Cradle for it, because Gaia's Cradle is like also like half a land. That's how I usually evaluate it. Is it's like half land, half ritual.
Sure.
And this card's kind of the same. All right. Glasspool Mimic. This is a shapeshifter rogue creature for 2 and a blue. As it enters the battlefield, you may have it enter as a copy of a creature you control, except it's a shapeshifter rogue in addition to its other types. So it copies Dockside and it's a rogue. We're talking about the rogue stuff again. But in reality, this is just a Dockside copier that can sometimes be a land and also is a rogue, which is like kind of cute.
Yeah. It just has enough like little things that like adds up.
Again, I think I don't know if we talked about Niv yet, but I think this is a card that could go Niv, right? Like, it's just an island that enters tapped, which is like fine.
Sure.
It enters untapped if you have a Blood Moon in play, which is cute.
Sure.
But it copies your Dockside, which is like actually kind of important. It can copy not like a Gilded Drake, but I'm sure there are effects in that. There are probably creatures in that deck that you're going to copy. And Dockside being the best of them. I think this card like might be good there. I think Niv Mizzet is the deck where the most of these like enter the battlefield tapped blue cards are the most likely to see play, just because of the way the deck plays out. It often doesn't. Its land drops can be awkward. Lands, yeah. So, yeah, I think this card is not going to see a lot of play, but it's just so interesting because like it does so much. And the cool thing about it is like both halves are incredibly like, if you have a creature to copy, you play this, right? And you're like probably fine because the creature you're playing is probably a good card because it's in your deck.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have a creature in play, you can play this as a land, which is like not that bad. Yeah. So, all right, this is the last one. It's Forsaken Monument. The reason we're bringing this up is it's a Basalt Monolith combo piece that also kind of is kind of cute in a lot of like the Godo decks. So those decks are already playing cards that do quite well with like Godo's already playing Basalt Monolith, and this card is actually kind of interesting in that deck because it is playing a lot of colorless mana producers, like even lands. Like there are a lot of lands in that deck that produce colorless mana, and this doesn't say non-land permanent. It says tap a permanent.
That's interesting.
So
like Ancient Tomb taps for 3.
Yeah,
pretty hot.
If you think about it, like Godo decks are trying to get to like 11 mana. This is 5 mana, and it probably doubles your mana, or at least like if it's not a perfect double, it's like it'll at least take you from like 5 to 8 or 9.
Yeah,
at least in my mind. So I don't know if it's good enough, but it's just interesting. It also is like a weird life gain card, which is actually relevant with Treasonous Ogre. So I don't think this is great. I could just see, I think in Godo or any deck that is like hyper colorless, that's playing Basalt Monolith, like if you look at the other Basalt Monolith combo cards, they're either really bad or they're colored, and this isn't. So you can put this in a deck that is like one color that doesn't have access to blue or red white, maybe a black deck. I don't know. So yeah.
It's an interesting effect, yeah.
Yeah. I think the fact it's colorless is like the most redeeming quality about it, and maybe the fact that it hits lands. Those are like probably the two biggest things.
Yeah. All
right. That is the end of our set review so far. What do you think of the set, Ian?
I'm a little underwhelmed, to be honest. Which is actually pretty okay for me, because they've been pushing the hell out of Magic for a little bit. So, literally Ikoria, which was a set I thought was going to be a flash in the pan. Like I literally, at one point or another, probably bought half of that set independently, just because I was like, oh, maybe I can use this in CEDH, or like and that gets to be sort of like a lot after a bit, so I don't mind that this feels like a lower power set. Now, obviously, they made some fundamental sort of there's a few cards that make a big difference, like all of the land spells we talked about. Those are obviously like pretty insane in the decks that can use them. I'm obviously Archon of Emeria is really all I can think about from this set. That's all that matters to me. That card's so good. But I do think some of the rogue synergies are interesting to look at, and there's a lot of like middle of the pack CEDH decks that are like they might find some use with some of this cute stuff. So
yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like a lot of these cute cards are just like small optimizations that have no impact on the multicolor decks. But they're not going to make the decks meaningfully better, really, but it is like a step in the right direction, right? They're not falling behind with this set, which is what they've been doing. Anytime we can really push some of the middle of the CEDH metagame up and not give like 4-color decks just a huge boon, it like definitely creates a more interesting play space and environment. So I think that's a really good point that I think this set is doing a good job at like creating an interesting play space. Yeah, one thing to note is that these cards, the double-face cards, are going to be in the next 3 sets. So this set and then 2 more. So this is like a year of MDFCs, modal DFCs.
Yeah.
What Mark Rosewater has said is that they're going to be permanents on one side, and then permanents or like permanents or spells on the other side. So the idea is that they aren't going to do any cards that could be split cards. They're going to do cards like
Sure.
a land that's a sorcery on the other side, or
Yeah.
things like that. That's why we didn't see all of the double-sided duels, because they're going to be coming in Kaldheim, whatever.
Kaldheim, yeah.
And so,
I think if I had to call a shot, I say there's going to be a healthy amount of creature spells in Strixhaven if I had to like put money on it, just because it is a wizard school based set.
I think differently. I think it is going to be Kaldheim,
Really?
which is creature spell, or a creature artifact maybe, and then Strixhaven is going to be enchantment spell. So like,
Oh, okay.
because like if you think about it, right, like wizards, enchantments, I think that's like a pretty interesting. Like if you think of Harry Potter, right, there's like a lot of like, which is what they're all based off of, right? There's like the cloak of invisibility, right?
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine like a cloak of invisibility on one side that's also on the other side, like instant that makes someone blink because like they disappeared and came back.
Sure.
That's not a good
Right.
design, but just like off the top of my head, I think that's what we'll see in Strixhaven. I think we'll see like whimsical,
I'm picturing
magical
more
on
like
one side, and then spells on the other side.
I'm picturing more like wizard one side, the spell the wizard casts on the other, but I can easily see that.
I think you're right. I you know what I think will be cool is like axe for Kaldheim. Is axe on one side, the creature holding the axe on the other side, like equipment on one side, the warrior holding the equipment on the other side.
Yeah,
really cool.
I saw a really cool, interesting Reddit thread theorizing about this, and they were saying that it would be very interesting in Kaldheim because it's based on like Norse mythology to have a legendary creature and then its saga pertaining to its story on the other side, which I thought would be very cool.
Yeah, we're probably going to see
this
gods.
is all speculation. Yeah,
we're probably going to see gods, right? Like,
I would assume. Yeah.
So like maybe like their flip cards where like there's like the demigod on one side and god on the other side. I don't know Norse mythology enough to know if they like flip in between or not, but that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
you're probably right. Probably a god on one side, saga on the other side.
Something like that. Yeah.
All right.
Exciting stuff coming down the pipeline.
Yeah. All right, Ian, you want to send us off?
Yeah, sure. If you are seeing any of these cards and you have the compulsive need to pre-order the entire Zendikar Rising set already, please get help. But also, if you have sought help and they said it's fine, you can head down to our TCG Player affiliate link, which is down in the description below, and you can purchase any of the cards using that link, and it costs you nothing and it helps us a great deal, and it's super, super awesome. And remember to do the YouTube stuff if you're there, liking and subscribing. That helps more than you know. And yeah,
it helps
thank you
my
all
confidence.
for joining us.
It helps our channel. It helps me and Ian not rip each other apart. Please help. Hit that, smack that mother trucking life button, or rescribe. I don't know. How does it work, Ian?
With that, we're going to call our show to a close. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and have an amazing week. Bye.